Welcome to Marine Tech Talk, a podcast about how Teledyne Marine's innovative technologies are enabling scientific discoveries and commercial tasks in the world's oceans and waterways. On this episode of the podcast, we are joined by Dr. John Howe, a senior lecturer in marine geology at the Scottish Association of Marine Scientists, or SAMS. His expertise is in fjord geomorphology and glaciomarine sedimentation. He's the operator of the UK Gavia AUV, Freya, and he's participated in more than 30 cruises to regions including the Antarctic, Svalbard, Indian Ocean, Papua New Guinea, and the Chilean Patagonia. John discusses several of his recent trips with the Gavia, as well as the advantages that autonomous underwater vehicles provide for researchers. Now here's our guest, Dr. John Howe, with the host of Marine Tech Talk, Melissa Rossi.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Marine Tech Talk. We're back again today, and I'm excited to say that we have Dr. John Howe with us today from the Scottish Association of Marine Sciences, or SAMS. John, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here with us today. How are you doing?
Thanks, Melissa. Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. I'm delighted to be here and delighted to hopefully tell you all about our AUV, our Teledyne Gavia AUV, and to tell you a little bit about what we've been up to over the past few years.
Fantastic. First, before we get started with that, can you tell me and the listeners a little bit more about yourself and about SAMS?
Okay, well, I'm a marine geologist. I'm interested mostly in high latitude environments, interested in the Arctic, especially, and the imprint of glaciers on the seabed. So a tool like the Gavia AUV is a really helpful tool. SAMS is quite an interesting organisation. SAMS stands for the Scottish Association for Marine Science. We're one of the oldest oceanographic institutes in the world, and we developed out of the first oceanography expedition from HMS Challenger in 1873. Now, we're a bit of a strange organisation in that we're a charity. We're an independent charity. We're part of the Natural Environment Research Council, the UK government science arm on the natural environment. We're a partner of the University of the Highlands and Islands, and we have three basic, simple, overriding sort of aims for the institution. We teach. We have an honours degree in marine science with robotics and oceanography and Arctic studies. We have a commercial arm, which is our SAMS Research Services organisation, so they do a lot of commercial work. And finally, of course, we have our well-established science organisation, and that's housed in what's known as the Sir John Murray building. Sir John Murray was part of the Challenger expedition. So yeah, we're an unusual organisation. We do all sorts of different things, but certainly we've had a long-established tradition for open ocean science and autonomy and robotics, certainly over the last sort of 5 to 10 years or so. As it's taken off globally, so SAMS has kind of pioneered much of this work.
So I believe that you purchased your Gavia AUV. It was somewhere maybe around 2015.
Yep.
Was that the beginning of the use of autonomous vehicles in your work, or did it predate that?
Yeah, it predated that. So one of our old colleagues here at SAMS, who sadly passed away, was Tim Boyd. Tim was a legend. Tim came over from the States, and Tim was interested in autonomous, using vehicles for autonomous observations. Tim was principally interested in deep ocean science, in Arctic science. And Tim and many of our SAMS colleagues went up to the Arctic on the vessel, the James Clark Ross, and we took with us a Remus. We still have a Remus hydroid vehicle that does the kind of physical oceanography. Particularly has been used a number of times up in the Arctic around Fram Strait and around in Svalbard. Tim and I cooked up the idea we thought what would be useful would be to have an AUV that could do some seabed mapping. Now, I've been involved in seabed mapping for many years, both with my previous job many years ago with the British Antarctic Survey and with SAMS, with the traditional vessel-mounted systems. And Tim said to me, "Hey, this is a bit old. Why don't we get an AUV that could do some mapping?" And so, really, it was Tim that came up with this idea. And yeah, I'm indebted to Tim for his energy and his vision. And so the legacy of autonomy at SAMS continues under the kind of the smiling face of Tim. Tim's watching, hopefully, and laughing at us as we muddle our way through the world of marine robotics. So yeah, thank you, Tim. But there we are. So it's a bit of a sad story, but Tim's up there laughing at me now.
Thank you, Tim. So how did you end up choosing the Gavia AUV? Obviously, you've worked with other vehicles before. Why the Gavia?
Why the Gavia? The reason is we evaluated. So this was funded by the Natural Environment Research Council. So it's public money, and so we went through a tendering process, and we really evaluated a number of different systems. And well, being blunt, it was one of the cheaper and more applicable systems that we, at that time, particularly the modular approach. None of the other vehicles that we looked at that time had a modular approach. And the ability to swap out modules and do different things and configure a vehicle depending on the science question was very appealing. We could go for, and we can talk about this, we could go for a smaller vehicle in some environments, such as hazardous glacial environments, or we could go for the ocean studies using a larger vehicle running all sorts of different systems. So that modular approach was really, really helpful.
Oh, great. Okay. So I also understand that your Gavia has a name, as many of them do. Yeah. What's your Gavia's name, and how did you choose that?
How did we choose that? I can't remember, if I'm honest. So we call her Freya. So Freya, because she was built in Iceland, obviously, she's a Gavia vehicle. So she's built in Iceland. So we wanted a definite Nordic kind of theme. We wanted something that would give us a kind of a bit of a Nordic theme, following her kind of ancestry. And it did make me laugh that we looked up. Freya, I believe, is one of the daughters. She's a daughter of Odin. I've got to be careful what I say now, because that could be wrong. She's a daughter of one of the gods, and she was she's the goddess of money and of I think fertility. So the goddess of love and money. And we thought, well, this just about sums up AUVs. They're expensive, and you got to love them, and sometimes they can be a little bit playful with you. And I remember reading that Freya, I think, she was carried around on a chariot drawn by cats. And if you can imagine how much fun that must be to be dragged around in a chariot, pulled by cats, that sums up kind of AUV and some of the fun with AUV navigation systems. But we could get that's a tale for another day, isn't it? That's a tale for another day. So there we are, Freya, which is a beautiful name.
It is, and it explains a lot, actually.
Anna, who looks after Gavia, of course, I think Anna's daughter is called Freya. So that was quite funny as well. So there was a nice link.
I was just going to say
Anna
that.
and the team in Reykjavik.
I was just going to say that to you, and I think that's why your AUV may be his favorite, and I can understand why.
Absolutely. It's quite funny, isn't it? It is quite funny. I'm not sure Anna would like us when you hear some of the horror stories of what we've done to his lovely vehicle, but we could talk about that. She has had some adventures, that's for sure.
Well, that's great. So talking about some of her adventures, let's talk a little bit about some of your past work with the Gavia. The application seem to have varied a bit. I did read something, I think it was covered by the BBC earlier this year, on a story of some surveys you ran with Freya that uncovered some shipwrecks off of Oban. Can you tell me about that work and what your discovery was?
To be honest, that was quite an interesting story. So in 2012, we did a number of vessel-based surveys which was an EU-led project for the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency. And this was called Innis Hydro, which was the Ireland, Northern Ireland and Scotland survey. So we surveyed, and other partners, Geological Survey of Ireland, the Northern Lighthouse Board, Maritime and Coast Guard Agency and other partners, surveyed a load of interesting areas around from Oban all the way down to across towards Ireland. Now, as part of that survey, we found all sorts of lumps and bumps. Now, being vessel-based surveys, these were fairly broad-scale, reasonably low resolution. So what we thought, when we had the AUV, we thought we would go back and investigate some of these interesting lumps and bumps. And in fact, what was revealed, not only with the AUV, but working with groups like Wessex Archaeology, who is an archaeological organisation, we realised that some of these are fabulous now protected wreck sites from the Second World War, and we found a number of military aircraft off Oban. We've also seen some interesting new shipwrecks that are older as well. So it's been quite a useful tool, and this is something that we've been using the AUV for with students. So we've had students from the University of Glasgow and our very own University of Highlands and Islands marine science students get involved in looking at the data and seeing the vehicle. So that's been really handy. So very much hands-on for the students, and uncovering new data, new sites particularly is very interesting. I must admit, I'm a diver, so I have ulterior motives. So when you have this kind of equipment, it is quite useful to go and investigate new places where you might be able to go and find some exciting things.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, great for the students, because it's always fun to make a new discovery, a history-related discovery. So, yeah, absolutely. I also read that I think it was some work. There were a couple of articles that were published about your use of Freya to investigate glaciers in the Norwegian Arctic. Totally different application. What were you doing there, and how did the Gavia assist you with that work?
Yeah, so this is tremendous stuff. So and this has led to some recent new project. So at that time, we've been working with SAMS. SAMS has had a long-standing relationship with the University of Tromsø and the Norwegian Arctic Institution in looking at the rate of change and understanding the rate of change. Now, the polar environments, the Arctic in particular, are some of the fastest warming areas on Earth. So these projects have been monitoring that change, that rapid change, in particular the loss of sea ice and any change in the behavior, studying the change in the behavior of the glaciers, the tidewater glaciers, where the glaciers feed into the sea around western Svalbard. So SAMS has been working in this area since the early 2000s. There's been moorings up there. So people like Mark Innell, Finlo Cottier, Colin Griffiths, Estelle Dumont, all our friends here at SAMS have been working up there for many years. Now, what we thought would be interesting is to see if there was any interest in bringing the vehicle up and looking at the hazardous inshore area, very close, adjacent to the glaciers in Fjord, around the scientific base of Ny-Ålesund on western Svalbard, to look at that area of seabed that is presently unmapped. Now, you can imagine these glaciers are quite active. And in the summer, they do produce some icebergs. They are carving, so icebergs are carving off these glaciers, falling into the sea. So getting in there with a vessel is quite a difficult operation, can be quite hazardous. So having an autonomous vehicle, having Freya, we can ask Freya to go into that hazardous area. And of course, she's out of harm's way mostly, and will be able to map that seabed that nobody's seen before. Of course, there are maps, but you can only approach those glacier fronts to within about maybe 200 or 300 meters is really the safe zone. And anything closer is in the exclusion zone, which puts people in harm's way. So an AUV is ideal to map the seabed in those hazardous areas. Now, what were we wanting to look at? We wanted Freya to look at the seabed and we wanted to look at the shape of the seabed as being an imprint of the behavior of the glacier. In addition, we asked Freya to also look at the water above the seabed and to look at any signals for meltwater, but also warming water from the ocean that might be warming those glaciers and therefore perhaps helping to accelerate the rate of calving and the rate of ice loss. So we were involved in various workshops and things, and we put this proposal. It was funded by the Norwegian Research Council, and so we went up there for 2 seasons with our friend Katrin Husum of the Norwegian Institute, and we worked up there in the summer of 2016 and 2017, and it was excellent. And we got some really nice results, which we published in Marine Geology last year in 2019. And not on the back of that, but associated with that, we've just had some good news that we'll be working in Greenland on a similar project from the UK's new polar research ship, Sir David Attenborough, in the next coming years around Kangerlussuaq Fjord in Greenland. So this kind of, this demonstrates the ability of autonomous vehicles to be able to work in these difficult areas. So it's exactly what they're designed for. So it's really good science, and it's very timely science.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you, what sensors, you mentioned looking at the water,
Yep.
not just the seabed. What sensors were you using on the Gavia to look at the water when you were investigating ice melt or water movement? Yeah,
so we were principally looking at temperature and salinity. So it would be the science bay that we used for that one. We also used the hydronaut. We used an hydronaut conductivity, temperature, and depth sensor on board. We literally put that on board the vehicle as well. So we were taking CTDs and looking at the structure in terms of temperature and salinity.
Were you able to draw any conclusions from that work, or support or refute current theories?
Yeah, absolutely. So the main conclusion is all these glaciers, to a greater or lesser extent, are being increasingly influenced by ocean water. Now, around Svalbard, that's the West Spitsbergen Current. So this is Atlantic water that's significantly warmer than the fjord water, the water that's already there in the fjord. So this is washing up against, particularly in the summer, comes into the fjord. Now, what we're finding is that the shape of the seabed in front of the glacier plays a significant part in enhancing that flow into the fjord. So it depends on the shape of the seabed as to the degree of warming that those glaciers will experience. And hopefully those ideas, which were already existing ideas, we've kind of strengthened that model. These are ideas that we'll be testing again in Greenland, and with projects such as the Big Thwaites Glacier project in Antarctica and Pine Island Bay. These are models that have been tested as well in the Antarctic as well as the Arctic.
As far as your upcoming work, you mentioned now a new study that's supposed to take place in the next couple of years. Who are your partners? You mentioned there's a new ship that's going to be commissioned for that.
So our partners on that are the British Antarctic Survey and the University of Durham. And as I said, the new ship will be the newly commissioned UK's polar ship, the Sir David Attenborough. So we're very excited by that.
Yeah, that is exciting.
So it might be, I'm not sure, it might be the first polar expedition, first polar cruise of that ship. We'll wait and see how things. So I think she's just started trials at the moment. Here we are in autumn 2020, so she'll just be starting trials. So we're looking forward to getting on board and getting Freya on board and seeing how she likes a big ship, because we don't do a lot of big ship work. Most of the projects that we've had in the past have involved small or medium-sized vessels. So she's been used on the Prize project led by my good friend Finlo Cottier here at SAMS. She's been up in the Barents Sea and around Svalbard from the James Clark Ross and I think it was the Helmer Hansen. But a really big vessel like Sir David Attenborough will bring significant challenges as well. So looking forward to it.
Well, that sounds great. And did you say you thought that was going to actually take place maybe in 2022?
Yeah, probably 2022, something like that, depending on how the ship performs and scheduling and all the rest of it.
Like everyone this year, obviously, COVID's affected everybody's work pattern, their life. I mean, everything. I don't think that COVID hasn't not affected anything. So this is the year we were all hoping would go away, I think. But how did COVID affect your work over at SAMS? And did you feel that the autonomous vehicles provided any more or less usefulness during COVID?
Negligible. We've not had any fieldwork at all. So we tried to go out in March, and literally we're part of an EU-funded project to look at marine protected areas, the monitoring and management of marine protected areas, and that's called MARPAM. And so with friends with Nature Scott, University of Ulster, and other colleagues across Northern Ireland, Ireland and Scotland, we've been hoping to use Freya, to use the AUV to look at marine protected areas and to look at the distribution and connectivity of species across these marine protected areas across the North Atlantic, or in this on the European side of the North Atlantic. Now, COVID appeared for us in the UK on, I think it was the 26th of March. We went into lockdown, and I think it was about the 22nd of March. We were packing the AUV. We were packing Freya to go to Northern Ireland and start a survey of Strangford Lough, just south of Belfast. And that obviously could not happen because of the UK going into lockdown. We tried again in October, and unfortunately Storm Aiden appeared, and we were completely blown out. So we've had a whole summer with no ability to really do any work at all. We have done a little bit of local work with our good friend James Thorburn. James is a great researcher here in Scotland, looking at flapper skate and at spur dogs and these kind of mobile species, very vulnerable mobile species. And the deep water areas off Oban are a key habitat for these animals. And so we've done a little bit of work with James using the AUV to photograph and document the habitats of these kind of skate and spur dogs and rays. But that's about it. We haven't really gone very far. As you can imagine, with all the restrictions, we haven't done a great deal of work.
Yeah, it sounds like the restrictions and the weather are playing against you this year.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Autumn in Scotland is always fun. Always fun.
I know, because when we started this recording today, it was raining so hard you had to move to another room for the call. So
we've got a bit of a stormy day here.
So the work that you had planned to do for this year, do you think that'll just play forward to next summer for you?
Yeah, for us, there's no point in using up funding, using up people's time when, it's a 50-50 chance of actually getting anything. So we tend, although, we will still be going out locally, we'll still be using our own vessel and using Freya locally, but in terms of delivering any major or significant pieces of science, that'll wait till the spring and the summer. So we won't be using her other than for testing and for our own refinement of her various systems and things like that.
Well, sounds like she gets a winter's rest and a little bit of a tune-up, kind of like a beauty treatment.
Yeah, that's right. a welcome rest.
It's a welcome rest.
Yeah, she's been in so many peculiar places. She's probably delighted to have a bit of a break. I mean, last year alone, we were in Tanzania. I think she was in the North Sea, the South Coast, and Tanzania in the space of about 5 months. So we shipped her around all over the place. So she was involved in a number of different projects. So it was very busy. 2019 was very busy. A couple of years before that, we had her in the fjords of Patagonia in Chile. These were all quite interesting projects. Certainly, the Solstice project in Tanzania was presented all sorts of challenges, and we were working on an old yacht, a 1950s yacht, which was a fantastic base for us to work from. But yeah, I think she's probably glad not to be broken down and put into her boxes and sent round the world.
Probably. Well, I wish you and Freya and your team the best of luck for better weather and no COVID conditions or restrictions next year, so that you can complete your work. And I really will hope that in either next year or in the coming time soon that we can have you back on the show to talk about some more of her work. It's fascinating.
Absolutely. Thanks. Thank you, Melissa. It's good to talk to you. And yeah, I'll be delighted to tell you a little bit more about what we're up to as we continue our adventures with Freya.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Marine Tech Talk podcast. For more information about the work being done with Freya, SAM's Gavia AUV, and the programs being offered at SAM's, you can follow the organization on Twitter or visit their website. We'll put links to both in the notes for this episode. If you like this podcast, please make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're hearing this show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next time.